Welcome to Sit Down and Cheer, episode 67, powered by Buffalo Wild Wings. Buy a $25 Buffalo Wild Wings holiday gift card in-store or online and get a $5 bonus to use on your future visit. For a limited time while supplies last, restrictions apply. For terms and conditions, visit buffalowildwings.com. This week's guest, Brian Faison.
Boot boot beat, spoodat doot.
He didn't like it when I did it. Only Mitch can do it. We're back.
We
allow ourselves to reintroduce ourselves. I'm Jason Hadjdu. This is Mitch Wigness. We're Sit Down and Cheer. And we used to talk about UND sports. And then you started traveling a lot.
We were trying to think of the last time we did one. It's been a minute.
Can you rehash your November, December off the top of your head?
A lot of small shampoo bottles. A lot of trips. I don't know.
Waco,
volleyball.
Minneapolis.
Oregon first. Oregon, Sacramento, Minneapolis, Waco, San Antonio. I don't remember. There's something else in there.
And we don't get any of these air miles. We don't get any of these hotel points. That's some garbage.
You know what? I can't complain about. We went Sacramento to San Antonio back to back, so I was basking in the sun, and everyone here was
back to Texas.
Yeah, I did okay. My legs are still white somehow, but that's because I stayed in the hotel room. That's why.
And you're less than 2 weeks from tying the knot.
Yeah, it's getting real.
Let's pod from that.
Should we?
Will Alyssa care?
Does
she even know you have a podcast?
She doesn't really care at all. No.
The only one she listened to, I made her listen to.
Well, that's because she's pining to be on it. I think once she's on it, she'll listen to it.
It's out of spite now.
Yeah.
It's all about her. It always is. You know her.
She'd be a funny guest.
Hi, Dave.
I'm getting snaps from Andy Parr. Perfect. He was wasn't he the genius behind this thing? Or maybe idiot's the better word.
He was behind this thing. Yeah. Then he promised to do a theme song, never did.
Well, how do you get away from boot bot beat, bootat doot? We like that one.
Dave, put a mic on. Come on.
Wow, he's salty. Oof.
Made him come to Buffalo Wild Wings for free. That's right, we are on location at Buffalo Wild Wings, our fine friends here. It's been a while, though. It's been a few weeks since we've both been in the same damn town together at the same time long enough to do this. So,
hey, we got a sign and everything.
Yeah, fancy sign.
It's cool.
You can't see it because you're listening on iTunes, and we'll get into that later. But we've got a conversation with Brian Faison coming up, soon to be retired UND Athletics Director. And I don't know, what else happened since we last chatted? Your Jack Morris finally got in the Hall of Fame. We won't get into that.
No, that's, you think that I want that.
He says he pushes my
care.
buttons, but it annoys him.
It does, because I don't care. I mean, Trammell, there's Faze right there.
He's walking in. We should get to it.
Yeah. I'm more mad that Dale Murphy's not in yet. Can we make that happen somehow?
You should probably just give up that dream, though.
I mean, is he better or worse than Jack Morris?
Got 2 MVPs to his name.
He does. He's got 0 playoff experience to his name. That doesn't help him.
Greater at his peak than Jack Morris, I would say. And Jack was just around longer, and
he was a catcher that was a Gold Glove center fielder. That's enough for me. I don't know. He's good. His decline was very swift. Yeah.
Yes.
That didn't help him.
All right, Brian has just walked in, so let's shovel some wings down and then get to it. We still have a decade to cover here. Where do we even start? How's it going?
Well,
what are the things you're taking care of these days as things kind of wind down and we get into the holidays too?
well, and a lot of it's the normal thing that you get to this time of year with some scholarship situations for athletes and some contractual issues or performance reviews for fall sports programs and those kinds of fun things. We're trying to get all that stuff taken care of before the holidays, and and just trying to wrap things up too, since we'll be heading out pretty soon. So a lot of loose ends that you want to tie down for the next group that comes in.
We're coming up on probably 2 months since your announcement to retire.
Mm-hmm.
Have you sat back yet and done much reflecting about the previous 10 years and things that have really been accomplished under your watch, and how far along we came, really?
It's interesting. I think I've had the chance to do that, and I'm not sure if I was retiring, I would have really fought back on last year like I should have, quite frankly, because it was just absolutely incredible across the board. And, you know, I've been very fortunate. You know, I basically got to hire almost everybody on the staff. We've had great people come into the program. They've done fantastic jobs, whatever it is, whether it's compliance or academics or sports information and marketing. And we've had a great group of coaches, too, so along with some fantastic student athletes. So, I mean, it's been a team effort all the way along, and we just had a great team.
We were looking at that the other day. We were looking at the year you came in, our staff page in the media guide. I think there were 10 to 12 administrators and support staff. Currently, that number is over 30. And I don't think anyone internally would argue that we're suddenly a bloated staff. We probably still have a ways to go. But what do you remember about starting and the staff size you inherited and just the heavy lifting that needed to be done?
Well, I think the biggest concern initially was the lack of knowledge in certain areas that we knew were going to be pivotal in terms of completing the transition to Division I over the next couple of years when I got here. That's compliance, academics to some extent too. And again, we got good people in there, and they were able to snap to and get after it. And we knew that we had to generate more revenue. We had to be able to reach out better. We had to be able to market better. And we had to be able to build up those staffs and do those kinds of things. And we needed to get in a situation with our media exposure that was much stronger than it was then, and it is now. We're very fortunate to have, quite frankly, the media exposure that we do have that is generated by the program, frankly.
And if someone told you 9-10 years from when you took over that you'd have a national championship in hockey and then you'd have 4 conference championships in the Big Sky, which wasn't even probably on the front burner at that point, I mean, if someone said that to you the day you took the job, what do you say to them?
Winning the national championship in hockey, not out of the realm.
Right.
I mean, back when I came in, I wear my Louisville national championship ring a lot, and I would have liked to wear my hockey championship ring, but it's too big.
Hey, that's not a bad thing.
Which is it's a good problem to have, but
where does a necklace?
But I knew the hockey program was going to be strong. We just need to make sure that we supported the enterprise and made sure it stayed strong and do the things that they needed to do to stay ahead of the game in a very competitive field when you're talking about collegiate hockey. And with our other sports programs, I mean, we were in no conference. Then we got fortunate, frankly, for the Great West because it gave us at least a landing spot, particularly for our athletes. At least they could be all conference. They could, those kinds of things. And you had a schedule, even though you couldn't go postseason because they didn't have an automatic berth.
Right.
And then, we built it up to such a situation that we were attractive then for the Summit League and for the Big Sky. So, it went quicker in a lot of ways, but we were very fortunate along the way.
And people probably don't understand just how hard that is to schedule non-conference games, especially like take basketball. You're not getting non-conference games in January because everybody else is in their conference schedule. So without that conference, that's always pivotal.
Yeah, if you're non-conference, you're not going to have many home games to start with.
And you're playing a Tuesday game, and you're going way out of the way to get it. So
well, and we even suffer a little bit from that now with some of the games we have to play because we have to play so many guarantee games in basketball to make the budget.
Yeah.
That it's tough to get games anyway. And the other thing is, and I think NCHC is finding this in football, you get so good, teams don't want to come in and play you. So there's an element of that as we started winning these championships where it was harder to get some games scheduled than had been before.
When you're a new athletic director, new to a school, how do you even navigate that battle with, I don't mean battle, but how do you navigate that with the university leadership, with the president's office, with the business office, that we need to generate revenue, but hey, I also need X number of new staff to make this thing viable. How did you navigate those waters?
Well, we were fortunate with President Kelley that he understood the cost of having a competitive program in the Division I, and that was a big help for us because you're absolutely right.
Did it help that he was new at the same time as you?
I think so. Yeah, we were pretty much parallel.
Yeah.
I beat him by a month, I think, but but so that was critical to have that leadership buy into what we needed to do. Not everybody agreed, but at the end of the day, the president's going to be the one that's going to lead the ship, and that made a big difference. And frankly, the jump into the Big Sky and all that cost money. You had to believe in the vision of what that would mean competitively for the program and from a scheduling standpoint for fan support. And that's what's exciting, frankly, about moving forward with the Summit in the Missouri Valley down the road, because from the fan standpoint, it's a whole different ballgame for them. Now you got 4 rivals in your schedule every year, whether it's football or basketball or volleyball. And we all know what those crowds can be like, and it's only going to get better. I mean, those rivalries, they're intense now. It'll be uber intense now that we're in the same league.
When you interviewed for the job and when you accepted the job, you're staring at an institution that's going through a reclassification, but doesn't have a conference home. There's the nickname and logo controversy always there. You've got a brand new president. Was there any trepidation walking into this situation whatsoever?
No. I look forward to the challenge. I will say this. It was my understanding that the nickname and logo thing had been taken care of.
Yeah.
Obviously, way not. But as far as the conference situation, when I was at New Mexico State, we'd gone through a series of conference moves from the Big West to the Sun Belt to the WAC. So I've been involved in those processes there, and I knew what we could do if we got the program strong enough to be attractive. And the reality is, the league needs to want you more than you need to want them, in the sense you got to bring value to the league, and that's why we had to build up media exposure competitively. We needed the programs to get stronger, and we were a long, long way financially from where, and in a lot of regards we still are, with salaries and support staff and those kinds of things. And I know it's hard for people to understand, but I mean, you're in a very competitive environment when you're dealing with coaching staffs, and particularly assistant coaches, and having continuity, because it makes such a huge difference if you can keep that same staff in place for a number of years.
I don't want to get too far into it, but just kind of, or the in particulars, but do you see the conference carousel keep spinning here as, teams are leaving conferences and doing that? Is that going to slow down at all, you think?
Well, I don't think so. I think maybe on a larger level it will. So I don't, for example, I don't see the Big Ten and the Big 12, and maybe now that I've said that, I don't know, because the Big 12's got its share of problems now, frankly. Which is surprising, but
a lot of those decisions used to be TV driven, and now we've seen that that's not maybe going to be where people make their money.
That's changing
anymore.
too, right?
Yeah.
Big time. Well, in fact, that's going to be one of the big changes, I think, in the industry. Is television is not going to be television like it was. Rights fees are not going to be what they were,
right.
And that's going to have a big difference. So if you're at a Big Ten school and you're in the lower tier, let's say you're in Illinois or Indiana. Not to pick on those schools, but you're still walking away with a $14 million payday just for being in the league because of the media contract, and that doesn't count the bowl share.
Right.
So there's a massive difference there. But, to me, I'm old school, but I just can't see Rutgers and Maryland in the Big Ten. And I think, to your point, I'm not sure what Rutgers really brings from the New York market, to be honest. I don't see it.
Just the fact that they're in New York.
Yeah. Well, that's right.
Yep.
And that's just my perspective on it. But I think you're right, Mitch. I think things are going to change dramatically in that respect.
Yeah.
Well, when you ask, will this carousel ever stop? I wonder what will it take to get it to stop? Like, what's the ultimate end point
I
here?
just feel like every school has their head on a swivel constantly, trying to decide where they're going to be.
So I wonder what it'll
years.
take to eventually settle all this, if anything. I don't know.
Well, and the reality is it always comes down to control and money.
Yeah.
And however you want to look at control, but specifically the dollars and cents for a program and what the level of competition. I mean, the thing that's frustrating for me is, I'm a Missouri graduate and we don't play Kansas. I mean, we're in the South.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And we don't play them at all. I mean, they won't even schedule each other. Now, it's just, Texas A&M on a Thursday at Thanksgiving. Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, for me, old school, I get it, but I think you lose so much when you lose those rivalries in that fashion. And that's when I got here with NDSU, that was a source of frustration, trying to get that thing restarted, because you knew the value.
Yeah.
All you had to do was look at some of the non-conference, non-ticketed sports situations in terms of attendance and fan interest when we did start playing a little bit. I mean, you had thousands of people at soccer match. I mean, it's just different. It's just different.
And take away the names of the leagues. Like the Big Sky, they have, their pros and cons, Summit League as well. I just like the fact that we're in the same situation with the I-29 corridor, that as this carousel keeps spinning, that we're at least lumped with those schools.
Yeah, and I think there's a good core there that'll stay the course. I think you're always going to have some issues potentially with some schools that might be a little bit more on the periphery. But I do think you've already seen it. Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, who we call Ooey Pooey, they made their move out of the Summit, so that's switched things around, and you wonder what Fort Wayne's going to do.
Yep.
By the way,
that was a quick move. That wasn't.
Yeah, it was like 1 year they're gone.
Bye. Yeah.
They have. It's not PU Fort Wayne anymore. They're only PU Fort Wayne. They got the IU out of it. But so that's a potential. And of course, Oral Roberts has been in and out of the Summit. UMKC, they're going through a major study of their program and what they're going to do. The WAC is, my good friend Jeff Hurst, the commissioner. But I mean, he's been holding that thing together with paper clips basically. And now they've lost Bakersfield, and they're going to probably lose another school. And what does that do? So I don't know. And I can't imagine the Summit looking west. But at some point, I think you got to protect yourself too. So, is 8 enough? Is 10 better? And scheduling's an issue. I mean, for most of the schools in the Summit, scheduling's not easy. You got to look at the geography of it. So I'm talking about non-conference games. Is
there some talk to, instead of having all these conferences at 6 and 8, constantly looking for new membership, they form a power conference somewhere? And I don't know if you're in tune with that or not, but I mean,
well, all you have to do is
talk about stuff like that.
Look at the WAC and look what they did when they went to become a power conference. And they went to like 16 schools at one point. It just collapsed. And what happens is everybody's got their own self-interest institutionally, like you were talking about, Jason, and that unfortunately becomes a play. I can remember sitting in the airport at Denver. And we came out of the big West meetings. Everybody was in agreement. Nobody was going to do anything. And we come out of that meeting, and the Boise State guys are already on the phone because they're already in negotiations. And yet everybody had said, no, we'll stay the course. So at the end of the day, your job's to do the best thing you can for your program.
Sure.
That's what I've tried to do, and you can't be surprised when somebody else does it. It's like when we formed the NCHC. I mean, Notre Dame was definitely a factor in that. But at the end of the day, I think we were better off for not having Notre Dame in the mix. I do.
That's where I wanted to go next, since we're talking about conferences. Your humor is a dry humor. So the first time you mentioned to me thinking about starting a new hockey conference, I thought you were kidding. It became very apparent very soon you were not kidding. What drove that for you, and who were some of the other key figures on the ground floor, and what did they bring to that movement?
For me, that was driven by Wisconsin and Minnesota leaving the WCHA, and there being no effort to replace or seek members to replace, and at a level and a commitment to collegiate ice hockey that we'd had with those programs. And for North Dakota, I mean, we need to play people that are like-minded and will put the money where the program is. And then for some of the programs in there, they either couldn't or they really weren't interested in doing that. So when I left the spring meetings down there, I just decided we've got to do something different. We've got to see if we can form our own league. So I picked up the phone and called Peg Dopplis at Denver and Ken Ralph at CC, and I said, I'll meet you in the breakfast nook of the Comfort Inn and Suites at the Denver airport, and let's have a conversation. And that was the start. There's no plaque there right now, and I fussed at Josh Fenton. There should be a plaque in there, but
still says please wait to be seated.
That was the impetus to start the league, and then Omaha got engaged, and things went from there. But it was a great group. It was really interesting to me because we had the perfect storm of athletic directors and coaches that really came together to help take care of all the mechanical things and all the kinds of things that you wouldn't think about.
I don't recall hearing from you a lot of headbutting from school to school or anything like that.
No. Well, they were on a conference call with me leading the conference call, and you know how technical I can handle technical equipment, so they were just lucky we could hold on a call. But no, you're right, and I think everybody understood and had the same drive to get the thing done. And again, they just brought different skill sets. I mean, we'd have guys with better television experience than somebody else. We'd have somebody who was better with scheduling. And it was really enjoyable to see that whole process go through. Scary because you're stepping out on a limb.
And what's the template for that, for doing something like that?
There is none.
No,
not really.
Yeah,
not a one sport situation.
And especially we weren't leaving. And I don't mean this to disparage the Great West, but we weren't leaving the Great West to form an NCHC. You're leaving
WCHA.
60 plus years of tradition.
Well, and that bothered me a lot. Yeah. I mean, if there was a way that we could have kept the name and kept some configuration in the situation, and maybe we could have over time with a lot of legal wrangling and those kinds of things, but we need to get that situation settled down. And I just knew for our program, and certainly for Denver and CC out of the gate, they had to have a program or a conference that was going to be committed to a high level of competition in the league, and that came. It's like the officiating, where you're getting them, who's going to supervise, how are you going to structure that. It was one of those opportunities where we actually got to bring our complaints about officiating into the determination of how the league was going to be dealing with stuff. Yeah. So we stopped a lot of the conversation with the officials and the coaches when they're really supposed to be just communicating with the captains. So I know that seems like a small thing, but that was taking all kinds of time. And from a scheduling standpoint, made it stronger, and it just worked.
I was in only a handful of those early meetings with the formation of the league, and this is the honest truth. I remember Josh Fenton really stood out in some of those meetings, and you kind of knew there's something there with this guy. And at the time, I think he was associate AD at Miami.
He was.
We had a commissioner, would soon have a commissioner in place. That wasn't Josh. People forget that now. But what do you remember early on about Josh?
No question. He was articulate, incredibly organized. He knew even though he was a golf guy, as a
Minnesotan.
Yeah, well, there was that too. But he was very knowledgeable about hockey and incredibly organized. And so when we had the situation with Jim, and thank goodness that played out the way it did for Jim and for us. Yeah. Josh was a logical choice to put in that position, and he's been fantastic. I mean, he's been a really strong commissioner.
How has the current state of the league aligned with the vision you had for it? Would you say it's matched what you would hoped it would grow into? Does it still have a way to go, or has it exceeded what you hoped it would become?
Well, I think it's to some extent maybe exceeded a little bit. I think competitively. I mean, when you look at the polls, when you have at one point you got 1, 2, 3, 4 that are out of your league.
Well, as of today, all 8 teams are in the national tournament.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
And I'm glad CC's really come back strong too. That needed to happen.
And Ken's put a lot of work into that.
He
program.
has. Yeah. But so I think competitively, the league is definitely competitive on a national level. I would argue it's the best collegiate hockey conference, bar none. And as frustrating as some people may get some nights with the officiating and everything, I think it's probably one of the better officiated.
Some people.
I'm not implying anybody in this group here, and particularly me, but I think it's a very well-run conference, and from a scheduling standpoint, I think they've handled all the scheduling things, and you've got some issues when you've got Colorado College and you've got Denver out there, and then you've got Western Michigan and Miami over there, and that. But I think it's worked out well.
Is your hope that the league eventually adds 2, 4 more teams?
I think there's some thought about that. You might go to some kind of divisional play. My only concern is, for us, think about how many games you want to have at home every year. You want St. Cloud, you want Duluth, you want Denver, you want CC, you want, so to me, that's a bit of a problem. And it's kind of like what was going on in the Big Sky. There were some real issues with some programs not necessarily getting games that they wanted with a Montana or Montana
unbalanced
State
schedule.
Yeah, so
And then it's how fair is that schedule if you don't get certain teams.
Well, it's like volleyball. You look at the North versus the South, and I mean there was no comparison. But that's always going to be a challenge. But to me, the configuration right now is right. But you want to protect yourself.
Volleyball was another one of your pet projects from day one. You got to feel like a kind of a proud papa to see how that program has evolved in the last decade.
Yeah, I do. That's always been a commitment for me wherever I've been is to push volleyball, and I understand, at least for me, the value of that because it's the first thing out of the gate. Really, it happens even.
I was going to ask, what were we missing with that sport? Why did you view it as so important?
Well, I think it's a fast game. It happens at a time of the year when the weather's not as big an issue here as it will be later when winter finally comes. I think from a recruiting standpoint, it's been proven this is a pretty good area for volleyball players. So whether it's that part of Canada or Minnesota or even North Dakota. I mean, Ashley Hardy, when I hired him, one of his things was he was kind of hoping he could start an all North Dakota lineup at some point, and he came doggone close. Mm-hmm. So, from that standpoint, you've got a market that's come on strong here. People have really gotten engaged, not just with the games. They understand the game. They can help the officials, which we always try to do. But it's been exciting to watch. And, I mean, it's a legitimate deal now. And it's amazing how few Big 5 schools, the Big 12s, the SECs, draw anything close to what we do just on an average basis. And that's what, to me, that's fantastic. It's great family entertainment. I know my 6-year-old grandson came over, and he'd never seen a volleyball match, and he went home to Minneapolis on Sunday, and the first thing he did was set up his soccer goal as a net and started playing volleyball with his dad. So to me, it's a sport that engages. We're fortunate to have student athletes that are really athletic. They're good students, and they win.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? Not a thing.
And yeah, they win. That was the whole key. Is our fans will follow a winning team. That's just how. That's how you build something in this area.
And I'm a football, hockey, baseball guy as a fan, but I'd argue well-played volleyball is as compelling as any well-played sport out there.
You better say that because of your wife too. But no, I would agree with you.
Volleyball brought us together.
I would agree with you. And in fact, I think as the fans have continued to come out, I think they appreciate now a lot of the nuances of the game and what's going on, and the speed of the ball and the spin of the ball and all those kinds of things. And we've been blessed with some pretty good athletes. We really have, and that pipeline seems to still continue. So it'll be a fun run in the summit too. We'll have to see. Denver is one of the top teams, and that'll be a challenge. They hosted the Summit League tournament while we were out there for the Denver Hockey Series. So you'll be able to look forward to that.
We lost Coach Hardy. We gained Coach Pryor, who's been one of several really home run hires that you've made here. What do you, as an administrator, and when you don't necessarily have a background in a particular sport, what do you really lean on in order to make a good hire, to identify the right people to come in?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. One is just your feel for that person, their character, what comes out. The other thing is you need to be networked, so you've got people that are knowledgeable about that sport, even if you think you know a lot about it, and they can talk to you about that candidate.
Which you had at New Mexico State for volleyball.
Yeah, and that particular family tree, if you will, of coaching from Mike Jordan at New Mexico State, I absolutely believe in. I think his approach is right on, and I think his successes have proven that. And that's why Ashley was, to me, a natural. And even though Mark was there briefly, he was there, and I could see some of the same kinds of things in terms of how he did game prep, what he did on a recruiting basis, that I felt would be really beneficial to the program. And he hit the ground running. He never looked back.
We're just getting the countdown clock. Our equipment will self-destruct in 30 minutes.
Wow.
So what's next for volleyball? That's 2 straight national tournaments. How realistic is it to put together a program that now we start winning a game or 2 into the tournament? We've seen how hard that's going to be.
I thought this year they could have got it done.
I think the key initially is going to be to get a seed that puts you in a position to play in that other bracket game. That then gets you in a position to get the momentum, and we know how momentum is.
We were so close to getting that seed.
And we were, and I think, it's like I told Mark when they got introduced at the hockey game that Saturday after the tournament game, all you have to do is win 40 next year. They won 30 and 7 this year, but realistically, they're not going to be in a league that's going to get 2 teams. Not for a while, and it's going to take a while to get everybody up to that level. You could see the Big Sky getting closer to that this year, much more competitive. But I think you've got to get a better seed to make that happen. So they'll continue to have to play a challenging non-conference schedule. You want to win some of those games, and they've done that. But now you need to get maybe a few more marquee opportunities to win. Mark's got the scheduling connections to maybe make that work, and he understands. And I don't want to identify the schools, but he also understands where some of those programs are at in an SEC or an ACC, where they're much more vulnerable.
No question.
And he knows that. And if he goes in with the right situation, they got a great chance to win, and they do. So I think it's the seed issue. I think that's what has to happen next.
Yeah, I think they were one home game away, one result different, where they may have been, like you said, playing a neutral site game for that first round. Which is
well, and that road trip. The Portland that particular SAC that hurt, and they were really competitive, and those were really good teams, but that hurt them. And then coming at home and losing to Montana State,
that was the one.
And Montana State's much improved, but that one probably hurt the most.
Yeah. I'm jumping around a little bit, but while we're talking about coaches, I think probably one of the challenges you didn't foresee was losing Coach Hakstol to the NHL, and I only say that because he was so entrenched.
Yeah.
If there was ever a UND forever guy, it was going to be Hack. What do you remember about first learning of the interest between him and Philadelphia and how that whole process played out? Because it played out quickly, but not.
Well, it played out quickly for me.
Yeah.
As my life passed before me, trying to figure out what exactly he wanted to do. But it was, Dave was good, and it was interesting dealing with the Flyers because, as you'll recall, their promotions guy, their PR guy, didn't even know
until I called to ask, hey, what time are you guys releasing the announcements?
So that was interesting.
What announcement?
Yeah, exactly. But it was quick. And this is a situation where having the president's support. I mean, I knew he was going to be at graduation on a stage, and he was leaving for Tokyo the next morning early. And if I was going to get him, I needed to get him right after he got done with graduation. So I couldn't miss him and couldn't do anything. So I called him on his cell, which was in his pocket, and I honestly could see it. I could
see it glow in his pocket.
I think he had. But I got a hold of his wife, and I said he has to call me when he gets done. And he was willing to allow us an accelerated process. And I felt all along when that happened, it wasn't a panic. We had two really good candidates right here.
It's just a matter of whether they'd go along or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And when you have, and everybody talks about this, the culture of hockey. There is a culture of hockey. There's a culture in North Dakota. I mean, there is. And I know I've been in enough schools that I understand that now. And we wanted to make sure we didn't lose that. They'd had some outstanding recruiting classes coming in. And from a coaching style point and familiarity with the players and everything else, you just knew if either Brad or Dane could step into that role, we'd be fine. Yeah. Excuse me, you can't get any finer than winning a national championship as your freshman year as a head coach. Yeah. But it was a little scary right at the start, trying to figure out, because you go to national search, and at that point, I felt like I was networked enough in the business that there were plenty of candidates I could go and have conversations with. But boy, when you got the right people right here, you do that. You got to do that.
And then you felt like a genius 1 year later.
Absolutely.
What do you remember about Tampa that whole weekend? We got some great pictures of you walking that trophy onto the ice.
Yeah, I like the one where I'm frowning on them.
The thumbs up.
Yeah, that
wasn't a frown. That was a.
That was okay.
Yeah,
let's
boys.
go with that. Yeah. But it was very nice. Obviously on the hockey committee and the NCAA hockey committee, and it was very very nice of them to allow me to present that trophy. They didn't have to do that
with your Minnesota counterpart.
Yeah, with Tom. Yeah, but it was very nice to do that because they didn't have to do that, and I appreciate that very much. Although I learned a valuable lesson that I should have remembered on other trophy presentations. When you don't have skates, pads, helmets, and a stick, and you're out there on the ice with those guys,
stay out of the way.
Good chance you could get crunched.
Yeah.
And when we did the football. The one thing about the Big Sky trophies is they're pointy. They're real pointy. Well, if everybody leans in while you're trying to present the trophy, you get a little point in your chest. But you know what? We'll take that hit anytime. And it was a wonderful experience. Everybody was great. That was a fantastic setting for that tournament. The facilities were great. The ice level stuff was really well done, I thought. Plenty of space and the locker rooms were great. That's one of the interesting things too. So this last year, my last year on the committee, obviously we don't make the Frozen Four, so I have to actually do the job that I was supposed to do, but I never could do because we were there as a team. Well, I got Denver, so I get the #1 seed. So they're in the Chicago Blackhawks locker room. So I'm going in and I think, boy, this is going to be really a neat locker room. Really? Compared to our locker room? Not even close. And then when you remember back to Philadelphia, you remember back to Boston, and I understand a little bit because probably their practice facilities are pretty awesome. But boy, we're pretty awesome. And but it was a special time, and I enjoyed that very much. And what a great championship.
We've talked a lot about the competition and all the conference stuff, but what's the thing that you're most proud of as you? And I think I know the answer to this, but what thing you're most proud of as you leave?
I would say the President's Cup, in the sense that it kind of represents bringing it all together. Right. Because it's not just about competitiveness, it's about academics.
You've been about the academics. You've been hammering that.
And I think, to me, maybe that would be the biggest thing. But we've had so many great things happen. And again, our student athletes, they're so off the charts. It's unbelievable academically and community service-wise.
The assumption was when we went to Division I, that stuff would suffer. So how did you insulate us from that?
Well, I think they misunderstood what the program was about at the time before we made the transition. I think there's always been a strong academic part to the program, so it wasn't exactly a struggle to get that buy-in to the next level. And certainly we incentivize the coaches, but I'm not saying that's what did it, but I think it showed that was important, and we were willing to.
We wouldn't be the only school to do that either.
But they knew to get the right kids.
Yeah.
And that's traveling with these teams, you know that
you
get the right kids because they're every free minute they have, they got a laptop.
And that honestly is important to our fan base. It really is.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'll never forget the first volleyball trip I went. They were playing in a tournament at Texas A&M, and we were at the airport, and I haven't really met the girls yet, and so I'm walking around, and they are all there with their iPads out, and their textbooks, and they're studying.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, okay.
Here's me trying to get a card game going, and everyone's like, no, I got to study. Okay, well, all right.
So they embrace. So again, we talk about culture. That's a part of culture at UND, and certain sports are stronger than others, no question about it, but it's there, and there's an expectation, and when you come in as a freshman, you understand what the expectation is from your teammates to keep it up.
Last Friday in St. Cloud, this is a true story, after the shootout win at St. Cloud, and this was a freshman also, as soon as the team gets back to the hotel after a game, they get a catered meal in one of the banquet rooms at the hotel. And while people were dishing up or at a table, one of the freshmen was still in his suit, and he was sitting on the floor against the wall. He had his laptop plugged in on his lap, typing a paper. And he's going to get chirped by his classmates if they hear that. Well, they don't listen anyway, but it's a true story. The game was maybe 40 minutes, had ended 40 minutes earlier, and he was banging out a paper on a Friday night while his teammates ate and kind of decompressed. So it's a very real thing.
Yeah, people don't understand that. I'm talking to Lexi Clable last night, and I said, so now what do? You have 6 days off? She's like, no, I got to take a final tomorrow at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
I think you got to go into student mode as soon as the game's over, and a lot of people forget that, ourselves included.
So we take that for granted.
It's a rough week for basketball because, unfortunately, from the scheduling standpoint, we do have some games during finals week, and you'd really prefer not to do that. But yeah, and you know what? It's the coaches. They've embraced that, and they make an emphasis of it as well. And you really need to have that. It's got to be top down, bottom up. So
some of that, and these are competitive people.
Absolutely, yes, they are
competitive within their team and competitive team to team too. There's probably some bragging rights at stake too.
Yeah, those GPAs do come up.
Yep,
they do.
And we publish those lists. We honor them at halftime. You don't want to be the team that's underrepresented.
Yep. So how cool was that? So that's something I've done every place I've been is to recognize the athletes on the court at a basketball game. Well, the visual, the optics, for fans, when you give them a list, that's great. But when you actually see what that means when
free throw line to free throw line,
300 plus kids out there,
up.
It's insane.
Yeah, and then whoever had to speed read the cards usually did a good job too. So,
and that's the thing we'd want to hang on to because I imagine once that part starts slipping, it's awfully hard to get back.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, University of North Dakota is a very strong school. I mean, it's got great programs, and it's not, you got to do the work.
You think we should have them on again after Christmas? Because we have miles to cover here still. Yeah, we haven't gotten into facilities. We haven't gotten into.
I want to figure out what's
personalities.
What's next for you? You got to take up knitting now or something, or what do you?
No.
No. Are you going to drive down it crazy? Or what's going to happen?
I'm seeing a lot of books. A lot of books.
I think
a lot of grandkids though,
right? I think a lot of reading, but
time.
That's going to go so far. We're going to enjoy our grandkids. That's been part of this, and thank goodness for video on your phones and stuff because that's made a huge difference for us.
Yeah.
But we've been so disconnected, and they're young enough still. The one's 5 and the other one's 6.5. That we've got a shot to get engaged in their lives again, and we want to do that very much. And plus, that 6-year-old's much smarter than we are, so we need to keep track of that one. But we're looking forward to that. But I think Donna will probably want me to get out of the way in a couple of months.
Well, you mentioned there's an athlete in the bunch too, right?
A
star soccer player.
Our Harrison over in Minneapolis. He's a 6 goals per game guy in the 5-year-old league.
He is.
I mean, it's
awesome.
and he's prodigy. And it's so funny. Well, his dad played, so he's it's kind of. He didn't have much choice, I guess. But he scores these goals and he does his strut thing back. And I don't know, where the hell did you get that?
He's already working on his celebrations.
Well, he's been watching too much Premier League with his dad, actually. But
explain to me how one of your sons is an official, yet you are so triggered by officials.
Yeah, well, the interesting.
How are those conversations?
Yeah, well, it's.
Because Brian's a perfectionist, I guess.
He wanted to. Well, my only concern with officiating is, I would argue. So you got me started. We spend a lot of money on officiating, both in terms of the individual paycheck, but also development and everything else. And I expect a best effort every night. I just do. I think that we should expect that. And it bothers me when the playing is the calling is so inconsistent on end to end. I don't know how you play to that. I mean, it's one thing if it's bad, and it's bad either way, and you could argue with whether I'm right about what I'm describing. But the reality is, when it's inconsistent at the other end, I don't know how you play to that. They do, but I don't know how you do that.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I mean, you expect a lot of your coaches, you expect a lot of your staff. Why wouldn't you think?
No, I think
a lot of your
well, it's like
officials?
I always say, there's no such thing like a first game. I mean, that's not excuse. When we play that first game, you should be as prepared as you are as the last game from a management standpoint. But with my son, he's a soccer official, and he has been for years, and he does college games, and he does high school games, and he does club teams and all those kinds of things. And he's got some interesting stories to tell about club teams in particular. But they wanted us to hire. They asked if they could hire him for some of our games.
Really?
Because we used the Minneapolis Association.
Yeah.
For our conference games, and I said, no way. We would never get a call. He would bend over backwards to not do that. No, he likes it. It keeps him in the game, and it's great exercise for him as well. And he's got the right demeanor, unlike his dad. He's got the right demeanor to handle
And you
it.
absolutely have to have a demeanor because based on the way fans treat you,
what they take.
I mean, it's just...
Think about, I think about high school games and the proximity of the fans to the officials and the stuff you have to put up. Think about the old Hislop days.
Oh, yeah.
That had to be so unbelievable because you were literally on top of the play.
You hear everything.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
You're a kid. You don't know you're supposed to yell at the officials until you hear someone behind you yelling at the officials, and then you start at it.
My dad.
Right? Number 2 is a lunatic.
Yeah, my dad may or may not have thrown his glasses on the ice once. Among other things, but yeah.
But we've had good leadership from the conference too. Our conference commissioners that we've dealt with have been great to deal with, and frankly, the fact that we were able to make the moves as quickly as we were able to make the moves for our new conference setup, I think, is indicative of developing good relationships. And I can tell you this: it certainly changed the Big Sky's operational manual.
Well, the fact that there's a concerted effort for that group to get better. I mean, some leagues may not care about that.
Yeah, and they have, and they will continue to do that. Yeah.
Well, should we let him get on his way? I think we got to have him back for one more.
If he'll have us.
I've got a whole list of stuff we didn't even get into.
No, that's fine.
Okay, let's do that. Thanks for doing this, Brian.
Yeah,
we
glad
appreciate
you
it,
guys. Thank you.
So we'll definitely have Brian on for a second episode. Whole bunch to still get into. And we didn't even get to this. We had a little bit of news break today about 90 minutes before we left the office to come here.
Yeah, this just happened. We were talking about guarantee games and money games. We never actually got a chance to talk to him about it, but playing Nebraska in football in 2022 and 2026. So when you look at it, we've got FBS games that total over $3 million, I think is what I had seen over the next
Raises
decade.
for the SIDs.
Over the next decade. So, no, it's one of those things where that's what you have to do now to help fund
pay the bills.
Your programs is take those guarantee games, and that's when you look at 2018 Washington, 2020 Kansas State, Utah State, Iowa State. So they're regional in the fact that you can get there easily, and so you're not spending the entire guarantee just getting your football team down there.
And a good chunk of fans can get there too for you.
Yeah, and couple that with the Utah game this year. I think that was well received as well. They were a top 25 team when we played, and we played them well before all the injuries hit this year. So it's just one of those things where you have to have a destination spot for your team each year.
Like I said, a ton of things we still could get to with Brian, and we will have him on again. So we'd like to also hear your questions, things you'd like to ask Brian on that next episode. You can hit us up at Twitter, at Sit Down and Cheer. You can listen to us. Right here's the master list these days: iTunes, Google Play Store, SoundCloud, TuneIn, and Stitcher. You can also find us still, I believe, at UNDsports.com. You're still doing that for us. You can't not find us if you try just a little bit. And that's what we're all about, trying just a little bit.
That's certainly has been here.
I want to thank Jeff and the crew again at Buffalo Wild Wings for hosting us. And I should mention, too, that it's the holidays, and it's up to you to make them memorable. And we know that can be stressful. So don't take this all on alone. Buffalo Wild Wings is here to help. We've got a party menu and even offer takeout so you can stop worrying and get to the fun part, the party part. Buffalo Wild Wings, wings, beer, sports.
Party menu. That's something we should get together ourselves, huh?
Open her up. Let's take a look.
Let's steal the idea. Let's have our own party menu.
Anywho, let's eat.